Today on Locked On Rockies, a lot of players next year are going to have their kind of sophomore season, depending on how you look at it, depending on how you define it. Is there a way that we can anticipate the sophomore slump, or should we just ignore that and hope for the best?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock On Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite teams covered by your favorite hosts, all sorts of sports, all covered right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network and the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. Let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies, or, you know, some Dodgers fans have popped up as well as the wonderful world of the YouTube algorithm definitely was sending our Juan Soto episode there, where, mind you, we fully acknowledge the Rockies weren't getting it, but I, little bit of a hook in there with the headline on that one. So, but thank you so much, folks, for tuning in and joining us all off season long. And remember, I want to talk about the things you want me to talk about. If you listen to the show, if you're an everydayer, if you are someone that loves tuning into the show, let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you are wondering about, and we'd love to talk about it here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. Today, I wanted to kind of take a different thing and just highlight how worried in ways I am about how many guys are going to have that possible sophomore slump and what that means for the Rockies, and if there's any ways to look into that, or like see if there's any signs, warning signs maybe that we can look at that might be worth considering. But on the flip side, I don't want to just dwell and sit there and focus solely on, oh, what might happen and what might go wrong, because one, I don't want to put that energy out there all the time, and two, it's really hard to know, especially with the young bullpen, what exactly we're going to get next year. So we're going to talk a little bit about that coming up here in today's episode. Before we do, FanDuel is today's episode sponsor, and you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so I was just curious because, this Rockies bullpen is going to be one that is very young. This is a bullpen that is going to, I think, I be better, I hope, but I think it's a bullpen that is going to be challenged. I think it's a bullpen in which we have to see just exactly what another full year of experience looks like. We have to see what the impacts of the use that Victor Vodnik saw last week going into this season. We have to see what, and we have to see how it combos with some of the veteran players on this team. It's going to be interesting to see how what does Tyler Kinley, Justin Lawrence, how do they factor in there into this team? But I wanted to start with, I feel hope. I do. What I think was one of the most exciting things about this young bullpen from last year. The Rockies had a bunch of guys that could come out of the bullpen and throw heat, throw some smoke. And and it's not always going to work out. Like we said, Victor Vodnik still had his struggles, but it's nice that the Rockies can start turning to players, pieces of the bullpen, and they look kind of like the bullpens that we see when these other teams take on the Rockies. And it's not one for one. But how many teams, do you see that have a guy, oh, here comes this guy, he's just going to pipe you 100. Here's this guy, he's just going to, throw you 100 and then throw a changeup that's ridiculous. I'm glad to see that the Rockies have bullpen pieces that are kind of fitting the mold of what modern bullpens have looked like. And again, I think that there is a lot of potential upside here for the Rockies and a lot of possibility for this club. I just think that I it's so hard for me to bullpen and the Rockies has just never been something that you've been abundantly confident in. You know what I mean? It's not something that you really, really have. I mean, the super bullpen, sure, they do, but with a bunch of it being young guys mixed with cores, mixed with this coaching staff, part of me does worry. As I'm worried about the development of the young outfielders, as I'm worried about the development of all these players. I mean, they have a new bullpen coach, Dustin Garneau. We'll see how that works. It's one of the very few coaching changes that actually happened with the Rockies. We do have a pitching focused manager in Bud Black. So there is a lot of stuff to sit there and say, mixed with the fact that that there's going to be tape on all these guys. So there's a lot of stuff that they kind of can go back and forth. But I look at there's not a lot of numbers, but you look at some of the savant stuff here. You look at some of the savant numbers for two guys in particular, I think that stuck out for the Rockies. Angel Chavi and Seth Halverson. Now, Halverson only had 12 innings pitched. Chavi only had 31 innings pitched. But that's still, I mean, for Chavi, that's a substantial size. And what was good to see about Angel, we kind of started to see the fact that little small chunk of what it takes to be in the bigs for a bit. Couple of great appearances, couple of moments where he comes in big games, shuts the door. Couple of other times where things don't go so well and kind of where, things got a little out of hand. But just off of the quick stuff there, they didn't qualify enough. And in some areas there, Chavi still has some area to growth. But the fastball velocity, upper percentiles, above great in there, 96.1 on the fastball velocity. Chase percentage at 36.5%, whiff percentage at 36.9%, ground ball percentage, something that's massive for the Rockies, 48.9%. And the walk percentage, only 7.5, strikeout 21.1. I'd like to see those strikeout numbers go up. I think that's my biggest thing with all Rockies pitching is them being a team that strikes out more batters this season as well. But when you see those type of things, you do get encouraged. That is a solid baseline there. As again, this is a player that is still growing. There's still so much here. But those are the kind of things you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Now, if you want to just put the reality check back on there, if you want to put the other stats in context there, 4.55 ERA over that time, 28 strikeouts and a whip of 1.29 there. But my point is, what does that look like when you have the confidence of consistency? This is a guy that was on the Rockies roster for the last 2 months of the season. He pitched 25. What is that? Yep, 25 and 2/3 innings out of his 31 innings pitched in the last 2 months of the season. So it's a different look, but this was a guy that got put into what I like about this stretch for this young bullpen. Chavi. Remember, this is the stretch where the Rockies were playing Mets, Diamondbacks, Padres, Yankees, Orioles, Milwaukee, Detroit, Dodgers. So these were big name franchises and teams that were certainly in the playoff hunt going in there. He had before a bit of a rocky end to the season, he had 3 straight appearances where he didn't allow a hit. In the month, he only allowed 9 hits in the entire month of 9 hits and 11 innings pitched there. And out of those 9 hits that happened in September, 6 of them happened in the last 3 games of his last 3 appearances. So it's going to ebb and flow a little bit. But you definitely are looking at this and you're saying, there's intrigue there. There's something there. And he came up and, he got an opportunity to get a save as well. Cut the home runs from August to June down to from 3 to 1. Didn't, the long ball is not a big problem. The only issue, or not the only, but a problem that plagues the Rockies that plagued on hell as well. Walks, 7 walks to end in September there. In his final 5 out of his last 6 games, he had at least 1 walk in that time. He had 3 walks in the total of August. So, something to worry about there. But again, those numbers, it's not a big enough sample size for us to fully be, I think, lean one way or the other. I think there's enough here, and there was enough of a look that you can hope with development, with a step forward. Just add him onto the list of Rockies players that need to take steps forward, that need to get better. But I'm liking the foundation of what I'm seeing. And he's not the only bullpen piece that I'm liking the foundation of what I'm seeing here. And we're going to talk about the other 2 arms that I'm focusing on coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes SelectQuote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, hoping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. Head to SelectQuote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/locked on. Go to SelectQuote.com/locked on today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/locked on. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot. We're talking a little bullpen here, talking about sophomore slumps, talking about, a little bit of what's going on here. We'll also wind down the show with a couple of we haven't really talked about the moves the Rockies have made this offseason, so we're going to do that coming up. So another pitcher that had a lot of time and finished up with stuff kind of being run of the mill. So it was clear how much work he was getting into, and it was clear that Victor Vodnik has established himself into the bullpen and established himself as someone that can be an interesting piece for this Colorado Rockies team. On the flip side, there is some stuff that you still look at and you're like, However, this was a season in which Victor Vodnik stepped up. This was a season in which Victor Vodnik was placed in into a situation where, I don't think he expected to pitch in 64 games this year. This is a 25-year-old that rose to the opportunity, that came up and did some things that the Rockies really needed him. I mean, with the struggles that the veteran Rockies players were going through, it was really important that the Rockies did have Victor Vodnik. A little bit of a tough stretch there in August. There are some injury issues as well with Vodnik. But I mean, even just liking this this headline here, Vodnik learns high leverage lesson. Nobody's invincible. I like that mindset as someone who went through a not a bad season to overall. You'd like to see some of these numbers and like to see some of these things dip down, including walks. We back 6 walks in September, 8 walks in August. There's plenty of time where you've seen and you just kind of about walks. It's one of the most infuriating things for a bullpen pitcher to do, especially when you're looking at the walk percentage at 11.6, the strikeout percentage at only 20.3. Vodnik, when you're looking at his baseball savant stuff, isn't necessarily blowing the doors off of people there, but just about into the average rankings, and that's okay. And that's okay for a guy that pitched in his first full season. I mean, he had 8 innings pitched in 2023, but this was 73 innings that he threw this year. A massive increase. His first real full season at the major league level. And yes, while it wasn't perfect, there's plenty of things to be encouraged by here by this stuff as well. Great off-speed numbers here. He's got a great fastball velocity. He's got an incredible ground ball percentage at 53.9%. The barrel percentage is at 7.8, just about around league average. The stuff that worries me about Vodnik when I look at the savant stuff, the strikeout percentage, the whiff percentage, the chase percentage, and the exit velocity off the bat. That means when they're hitting the ball well off of Vodnik. And, that was the case there for Vodnik as the season went on there. Not so much in terms of giving up the long ball. Didn't give up a ton of home runs there in the second half of the season. He gave up 3, and he gave up no more than 3 in a month the entire season. So, there it wasn't like the long ball was the big damage. More so, other extra base hits and free passes, of course. But I really believe that you gotta, as a bullpen pitcher, you have to be strong. You have to succeed in getting guys to chase and getting guys to swing and miss. And to see the chase percentage at 22.8 and the whiff percentage at 21.8, I just not what I'm hoping for. Granted, 1 season, 1 year, 1 sample size. I'm hoping that changes and that develops there, especially when you're looking at the fact that his off-speed stuff has some good solid movement on it, and he's able to pump up fastballs up in the high 90s there and flirt with that 100. I think that part of some of these numbers and part of these things was an over-reliance on Victor Vodnik last year. But I think if you ask Victor Vodnik, he would say, I welcomed the challenge. I stepped up to the challenge. I was ready to this is what you want to be as an athlete, right? This is what you want to be as a major league ball player. You want to be someone getting the opportunities to be be a factor, be on the bump, be in there in big leverage situations. Victor Vodnik was called in to pitch in incredibly big moments throughout the season there for the Rockies. And while he wasn't perfect, he certainly had some massive moments as well. He certainly was able to do some damage and help out his team. So I'm encouraged. I'm excited to see what comes from Victor Vodnik. I think that when you go through something like that, you kind of experience the true grind of an MLB season, and I think that's going to be something that will help him there. But this is, again, we need to see development. This is another guy that, yes, he's made it to the majors, but just because he's made it to the majors and there's a little bit of stuff that's interesting, it has to go forward. It just has to move forward. So again, this is another situation in which the pitcher-focused manager, the pitching coach, new bullpen coach, all these guys have to really come together and help these guys take steps forward. And again, it's the proof will need to be in the pudding on that one. One more guy that I wanted to talk about real quick. Not a lot of innings, but just an immediate whoa. Like an immediate sense of just okay, this could be someone that's closing ball games for the Rockies sooner rather than later with Seth Halverson there. Only 12 innings pitched, but And again, you can't really go too crazy on the Savant stuff because it's the smaller sample size. But just after what he was getting, his Savant numbers are way up in the areas of greatness. If they were to, it's, you can't just look at it and say, oh, look, he's got all these advanced analytics and stats. Oh, look, it's right there. No. It's with the sample size it kept in mind. But let's just play the hypothetical. Let's just rock and roll. Say if these were to be compared to league average. Say he did have enough innings pitched and he was able to maintain this level of success. Seth Halverson would be among the best pitchers best in baseball with at ERA, batting average, fastball velocity, whiff percentage, strikeout percentage, walk percentage. Very good at ground ball percentage. Very good. It's just basically very good across the board. And that's the type of stuff you're hoping for. A guy that can just come in there, pump you a four-seam fastball at 100, a sinker that also goes 100 miles an hour, and then you have a split finger and a slider that mix up, giving you a nice four-pitch mix going into that final inning. There's still plenty to be seen here, but that is the profile for a closer that you're hoping for. That is what you're hoping for. So the question of can we avoid or can we predict sophomore slumps? I don't think you can predict them completely. I think that you can look at signs and be concerned. You can look at examples for the Rockies and be concerned. I mean, again, what have we seen from, unfortunately, the trajectory of Justin Lawrence has been downward since really, the sophomore season. But when I look at some of these Savant numbers, I'm encouraged. I am. I think that there is a foundation to build off of. But the best way to avoid the sophomore slump, the best way to not have that factor in is really good development from the coaches. And again, I've brought up a bunch throughout this episode, but this bullpen is the next big test for Bud Black and this pitching staff. Because they've had to navigate the starting rotation being a mess for the last 3 seasons. And the bullpen's been it's been whatever. Now, though, this bullpen, these players, these guys, they have to be the next example of why you're bought into Bud Black, why you're bought into this coaching staff. These players need to take steps forward, and this bullpen needs to take steps forward, or else the Rockies will be continuously in the same position. It's not been all the time that the Rockies have had guys that are pumping 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen. That hasn't always happened. And I know that's not the only thing, but at least it's the Rockies got people that can come out and throw that gas and try to blow it by some guys or get that weak contact and let that great defense back it up. So I'm not as worried about looking at a sophomore slump from the player's perspective. I'm looking at it as how does this coaching staff, how does this team put this team and get this team prepared and put in the best position to win? Because I do think that there's something to be intrigued by a lot of pieces of this young bullpen. And I'm hoping that Kinley and Gilbreth and Lawrence can contribute to this team as well. All right. Rockies have made a couple of moves this offseason. So far, let's talk about them real quick here coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And remember to please play responsibly. Locked On Rockies, segment number 3 here as we get ready to close out the show for today. But before we do, we haven't really mentioned the fact that the Rockies have made 2 offseason moves here, getting Owen Miller to the Rockies. We talked a little bit about him and talked about the fact that defense and speed seems to be an interesting thing for him. He's never really been able to break out on offense. and certainly not someone that we're going to have to put a lot of focus on. If it kind of goes exactly against what I was saying yesterday, but there's a veteran presence for the bench, I suppose. But he was down with Nashville basically in the most of the season last year. 255, 652 OPS in 104 games there. I don't know. We'll see. That one's I don't know. Low intensity move there. But I did want to talk about Jimmy Herget there. I believe he was it's the human glitch is what he used to be known as here. Let's see, 31 years old, 12 and a third major league frames with Atlanta, posting a 4.38 ERA with a 15-3 strikeout to walk ratio. Got claimed by the Cubs, didn't pitch in the majors for them. So the thing that is interesting here, and the things I think the Rockies liked about this move here: 3.54 career ERA, 22% strikeout rate, and a quality 7.4% walk rate. I think that's exactly what the Rockies were looking for when it comes to adding somebody in there. Coors Field, it's going to be a problem. But here's what baseball MLB Trade Rumors says about this deal, and kind of makes me a little bit nervous about this one. Because when you're talking about red flags coming to pitch at Coors, I think this paragraph sums it up. Herget doesn't throw particularly hard, averaging just over 92 miles per hour on his heater in 2024, and he struggled to keep the ball in the yard these past 2 seasons with 9 homers and 41 and a third frames. That's 1.96 home runs per 9 innings pitched. That doesn't necessarily bode well for his move to Coors Field, but the Rockies are perilously thin in relievers with big league experience, so it seems they'll consider giving Herget a look in hopes that he can curb that proclivity for homers. You will not have success pitching for the Colorado Rockies if you give up a bunch of home runs. Plain and simple. I like the strikeout rate. I like the walk rate, but it doesn't matter there. If you are someone that's going to be prone to giving up a bunch of home runs, if you're a player that is going to be unable to keep the ball in the yard, massive problems. Massive problems. It's and especially when you consider the teams that the Rockies will be playing at Coors Field. Yankees are coming into town this year. Of course, you have just the NL West and these other teams that are coming to visit. This is a guy that I think if after he's been claimed, obviously been looking to get some stability, looking to continue that. And again, how can this coaching staff help this player? That's going to be an interesting part there. But again, low leverage move, not doing a lot. And again, as much as we want the Rockies to do big, bold things, this offseason might not prove to be the best time to do that. But I like the strikeout rate. I like the nickname, the human glitch. I like a unique arm, release angle and all that good stuff. That stuff's all fine and dandy. But if you have a home run problem, it ain't going to work at Coors. I mean, again, I think that's what plagues Austin Gomber, right? I mean, Austin Gomber, I think, would look a lot better. Kyle Freeland, same thing. These guys would look a lot better if they didn't give up as many home runs as they did. And the Rockies, as a staff, haven't done a good job at preventing home runs. They might not be the worst team in giving up home runs, but again, when you hear a guy that is prone to giving up the long ball go into Coors Field, the warning signs start to flash. So I don't know. So again, I'm just kind of looking at stuff, giving my 2 cents on these things. I think the jury is so far out on so many of these guys. You can look at the Savant, you can look at the stats from last year, you can look at minor league stats, you can look at all this stuff. But the point being is, we'll only know about sophomore slumps or if guys can fix their home run problems when the season starts. And if this team is going to continue to put faith into the coaching staff, then this coaching staff needs to really, really take it on themselves to get these guys to take that step to the next level. Because far too often, Rockies players hit a low ceiling and don't go anywhere further than that. And that's what we need to see from this young bullpen going forward in 2025. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And if you need a second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.